Congratulations on your film. I saw it, The Boy from Nowhere. And can you please
Thank you.
tell us what inspired you to do this film and how you got involved, especially with Mindanao and Southern Philippines?
Sure. Well, the first thing I'll say is the Philippines is one of my favorite countries in the whole world to visit. The people are incredible. They, I think that they're some of the friendliest people in the world. If not number one, they should do friendliest rankings. And like people think Canadians are friendly, but we've got nothing on Filipinos. They're so friendly. So I used to do a lot of work with different charities, non-governmental organizations. And so I went to one a number of years ago, or they sent me through Southeast Asia on like a tour. And I was doing photography and video for a bunch of different projects that they had in Thailand, Cambodia, Myanmar, and the Philippines. And I ended up in the southern Philippines in Davao. And I even went to Zamboanga City, which is in the spot you don't go as a white person. Like Filipinos know, oh yeah, you don't go there. And they had just been laid siege to by a rebel group. I think it was the MNLF, and they had burned down a whole fishing village, Bajau fishing village, attacked the city. So there was refugees everywhere in living in tents on the beach in different camps. And they had really been traumatized by this event. And I found out that there were child soldiers being used by the rebel groups, and those ones were Islamic. And I did some shooting there, some filming there, and met some people and thought, wow, this is such an interesting story that very few people know about. And we've heard about child soldiers in Africa, but we've never heard about them in Southeast Asia. But they happen in Myanmar, and other places, and they happen in the Philippines in the South too. And it's such a tragic issue that I thought, oh, it would be great to go and do a film. And I did a short film music video. I actually did 2 music videos on that trip as a side project. Side note, one of the guys I did a music video for is nominated for this year's Oscars for best soundtrack for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I did a music video for Sunlux. And people were like, wow, the imagery is really amazing in Southeast Asia. The story seems really cool. And then what happened was I got an inheritance. My grandma passed away, unfortunately, but I got a new camera and I thought, okay, I'm going to take some money, not a lot, but like $10,000 or $15,000. And I'm going to go, because I bet I can make a whole movie in the Philippines on this amount of money. That would barely get you a couple of days in Canada or America, but in the Philippines, your money can go very far because people are so friendly. They want to help. And I collaborated with the locals to tell a story that was true to life, that represented the plights of a few different people groups, from Bajau fishermen to former gangsters to the tribal peoples in the mountains and the valleys of central Mindanao, and collaborated with this idea on farming and food scarcity as a big issue there, that I wasn't really aware of, but just how easily manipulated that somebody can be if they're just hungry, and they'll trade so much just to feed their belly. So that was so inspiring to me. And so I did a few trips over a couple of years, built those relationships, and started filming. And then we filmed sort of half the movie, and then I was able to go back after doing a project with World Vision in Nepal, and finish the movie a few years ago. And then we did post-production for a couple of years, and then film festival run, and now it's finally coming out. So I'm super excited because it's been in the process for a long time.
Yeah, great job. Most of your actors are non-actors, actually. So how did you recruit them and cast them? I know Gary was from the slums.
Yeah, they all basically played themselves. Pretty much everyone in the film is just playing a version of themselves, not exactly their story, but they are just being themselves. I met Gary through the charity that I work with in Canada. He was one of the sponsored kids, and he was in the community in Agdao in Davao City. And his brother was in my music video that I did the first time there. And so I got to know him then. And I just auditioned a few kids, and he was so trusting of me and just willing to do whatever it took, and so natural on camera. And to be honest, the biggest thing is that his parents trusted me, because not many parents would trust me to sort of take this kid around and put a gun in their hand and run around in the jungles and stuff. So the biggest thing was mostly actually his parents. And then Nak Nak was a former gangster that I met who had been rehabilitated, given his life to God, and was really on the process of changing his life around. And he had such a natural charisma on camera. And I told him, just treat Gary like your little brother that you never had. And he was, to be honest, I think he is the best character in the film. He just really has this natural charisma to him, and we really care for him, even though we're not sure about him as a character, whether we should trust him or not. And then the villagers at the end are basically just playing themselves. Datu Vic is the chief of that village, and that village's primary mission is peacekeeping between the corporations, the government, and the rebel groups and the tribal groups that feel like their land is being encroached on. And so his message at the end is just like 100% their message of their tribe and what they're passionate about. So it was just, you could call it God, destiny, fate, whatever you want to call it, that I met these people and they came together and basically just played themselves. And they were so natural on camera, but also it's just the magic of editing too. You get enough takes and you find the performance and you work with it.
So you filmed this movie guerrilla style in Bukidnon. Can you tell us more about the experience and the risk and challenges of filming there?
Yeah, so I met a few people along the way that told me it would be a bit risky. A few people that had relationships with the NPA through a family member or something. And the impression that I had of so if people don't know, the New People's Army is a long-running, more communist-leaning rebel group that operates in Bukidnon. And so they are not a fan of the big corporations coming through. So for instance, we were driving up to Bukidnon and there was a truck that had been burned, a whole semi-truck that had been burned, was on the side of the road. So I got the camera out and took a shot and I put it in the movie. So people think like, where did this burning truck come from? It's like, oh, that was really there by the real rebel group. They had just burned it down. And it's because they had gone through their territory without paying tax or paying reverence to the tribal lands that it was going through. And so there's this, we also met members of the military who told me to be careful, but I got the impression that I wasn't in danger unless I got caught in the wrong spot, but that I wouldn't be kidnapped. I had enough relationships with people in power with relationships, whether it was the Talaandig village or other friends that I had or friends through the church, that I wasn't really going to be in trouble. But I did do a radio interview with like the People's Radio, who they would all often listen to, and they gave them a warning like, hey, Sam is here. He's going to be filming in the location around Sanko village. If you see a bunch of guys rocking around with guns, it's just a video shoot, film shoot, which is a risky thing to do. Like, especially being on the streets and stuff, like people driving by would think that they're the real rebels and would get scared. So there was that challenge, but I felt the people were so friendly and really took care of me, and I had enough good relationships that I felt safe. But we also took precautions to stay close to the village and use actual villagers that other people would recognize, so that they didn't think the military was coming in or the rebel group was coming in.
So how was your experience interviewing the NPA guy, the former NPA guy in jail? What did you learn from him?
Oh yeah, that's right. How did you find out about that? Was
I
that
did my research.
You did your research. Yeah, I just really learned about their plight and I really sympathized with it. And I met a different people in jail with different stories, and people who it wasn't about an ideology necessarily, but it was about protecting the tribal lands and the rights of those groups. Like you can imagine, in Canada, we have a similar problem with land rights, where the First Nations feel that they have the right to the land and the government feels that they have a right to the land. But in Canada, we have so much land, we can just say, okay, well, you take some over here and we'll take some over here. But in the Philippines, there's not very much land to go around. there's way more people than Canada and way less land. So these conflicts are going to happen where can we mine this land that's tribal, that's has tribal rights or not? Well, is it the government land or is it the tribal people's land? So just hearing about those conflicts and what they were doing to support the tribal people was really their primary concern. And so I didn't want a rebel group that felt like the bad guys necessarily. I wanted to understand their perspective. And so I have a line where the rebel leader in the film is talking about mining companies from Canada, Australia, and even, or yeah, Japan, Australia, and even Canada. And I wanted the Canada in there because it's true, because we don't know that we have mining companies in these countries that are not, the local people are not happy with what they're doing, and that we would feel that responsibility and just that connection a little bit more. So I put some of those things in the film that I talked about in that interview, just to help understand the viewer understand that it's not, these aren't the bad guys necessarily, but they also don't see in terms of, oh, an 18-year-old can fight, but a 17-year-old can't. Like they think, okay, if you're a young man, if you're over 13 and you're ready and willing to fight, here's a gun. They don't think in terms of human rights as well, which we think about in terms of like, that's technically a child soldier and that's a huge violation of international rights, you know? So.
And what did you learn from the chieftain that you befriended and talked to?
Oh, Datu Vic, I learned so much from him. Really to respect local traditions and practices, that I couldn't just come in as a young white guy with a camera and a lot of cash and try to take advantage of the setting and the local people. I found them to be so welcoming, even though I was kind of young and brash coming in there with this idea, oh, I want to shoot an action movie in your village. Like, that seems so crazy. But they were very welcoming, and then coached me on like, okay, if we're going to be a part of this, we need to tell our story. We can't just make an action movie, but it has to be sympathetic to both sides. And the main thing that we are fighting as a village is food scarcity, is traditional farming practices. So our identity is around farming. We are training our young men to be farmers. We're training outcasts and other people to come and be farmers. And so farming became a theme in the film that I wasn't even aware of when I started, really. And then we kind of had to backtrack and change some things to go, oh, this food scarcity issue is so important to the through line of the whole film, especially when you're starting out a fisherman and the fish are becoming less and less because of the fish dragging on the ocean floor and global warming and storms and this kind of thing. And so there's more food scarcity at that level. And so that was the primary lesson I learned from him, was respecting the local people and traditions, to partner with them, to bring them on board into the project rather than telling them this is what we are doing, and allowing their voice to come through in the message of the film. And that partnership really led to a beautiful co-partnership where this film isn't written just by me. It's not just my project that I'm impressing onto the Filipinos, but we are partnering to tell a Filipino story through and through.
And I also read that you fed the cast a lot of manok or chicken as a
Yeah,
payment
chicken
for them.
adobo.
Chicken adobo.
the
So tell
the
us more about how you dealt with the cast.
Well, the primary actors, I paid a stipend, and we ate well. We ate lots of street meat. And I found that the best way to get people involved was to offer chicken adobo or or to pay for some food. So if ever there was people who were basketball players or soldiers or something who didn't have a speaking part, at the very least they would get to eat well on the day that we were filming. And so I found the Filipinos, they're so friendly. I feel like in other countries you would have a hard time getting locations and getting actors and extras for very little money. Everybody would want to get paid. But in the Philippines, they were happy to do it. They're just like, but it would respect us if you fed us afterwards. So a lot of my budget just went to feeding people and keeping them happy, but just having this attitude of this is what we are doing together, It's not uh it's not just me coming and paying and making a film for myself, but it's something that we're doing for fun, really.
So you had somebody cook the adobo for you.
In the village, yes, I would hire people to cook for us when we were shooting in the village. If we were shooting in the city, then we would just use street vendors, just whatever people wanted, or I forget what the local place was, the local restaurant. It wasn't Jollibee, it was another chicken place. Everyone loves Jollibee. I'm not a big fan.
So
But
you
yeah,
shot, directed, produced this film, but who translated the English script to Bisaya and Tagalog?
great question. Um, I had a rough translation based on the lines, and I could kind of tell. And my assistant in the Philippines helped with a rough translation. But then I had a friend that I played basketball with. A side note is that I love basketball. I'm a huge basketball player. And so every time I go to the Philippines, I play all the time. And that's how I got connected with a lot of people, and wanted to put that in the story. So a guy that I play basketball with here in Canada is married to a Filipino, and she's from Mindanao. And so she came over and we watched through the film and we fixed some of the subtitles and checked things. So there are Filipinos everywhere. You can always find someone who's ready and willing to help. So I just had somebody locally here in Canada who helped me just dial that in.
Can you give me the name of that person who helped you translate?
Yeah, I will. I'll have to double check the spelling and stuff, but I'll
Okay.
message it to you. Yeah.
Uh, okay. So I like your description of the Philippines like upside down world. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it's very different than Canada. For instance, it's very loud. So it's very hard to sleep in the Philippines because the karaoke, the dogs, the car horns, and the balut guys go until like 2 in the morning. And then you get like 1 hour of quiet time between 2 and 3 before the roosters and the babies start. So, as any Filipino knows, like it's hard to sleep there. So I would sleep with earphones in and rain blasting in my earphones, white noise to try to drown out all the karaoke. That's because Filipinos love their karaoke. But it's very congested in the Philippines. But the people are very friendly, and so it's very different than Canada in that Canada we have a lot of space, but you keep your space from other people. You don't really talk to other people, and you want to have your own house and your own property. And the Philippines people are jamming the whole family and grandma and the dog into one small space, and they're so friendly and they live and work together as neighborhood communities. They're so tight knit as a community, whereas here I feel like we're missing that. So I think we have a lot to learn from Filipinos in our community, in our neighborhood, even our cooking.
So
But
I
Filipinos could learn how to like keep it down after 11 o'clock.
good luck to that. I know you've heard a lot of karaoke. So did you join them in karaoke and also basketball? Did you see how they played basketball in the province with their slippers?
Yeah, exactly. That's in the film. There's a good shot of them playing with their slippers. I did play with them. I've got lots of shots of me playing with them. The tricky thing is they play a different style. And the hard thing is actually that because I'm tall and white, they would change their style to try to adjust to me. And then we'd end up losing because the other team would just play fast. But I didn't play fast enough with them. And so I feel like they usually took pleasure in putting the best players on the other team and then beating me so they could brag about beating me. But I brought my shoes. I never played in slippers because I wouldn't be able to do that. But I had so much fun playing basketball. I don't think I did karaoke. Um, and I didn't try balut, so that'll have to be next time.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned you did music videos in the Philippines. Can you tell us more about that experience? You know, it's a very musical country too.
Yeah, it is. The music videos I did and the ones done here in the West tend to be more narrative, like a story. And so I was very inspired by this music video by a band called Rudimental. that had done a very popular music video in Manila. And they had told the story of two boys who were best friends, and one became a breakdancer and one joined a gang. And it's this very congested story in 5 minutes, but so powerful and so well shot. And so I was inspired by that music video to go to the Philippines and do a story about a kid who gets bullied and learns some martial arts and then uses sort of some martial arts to fend off the bulliers. And I got a grant from a Canadian telecom company to go do that. And at the same time did a music video for Sunlux, where we kind of have these portraits of children in poverty, and then they see these spaceships taking off at the end. And it's sort of this contrast between the poverty of people in the world and the riches of other people can afford to escape. And it was a metaphor for global warming, that like perhaps one day the day will come where we are left in this, or the children are left with the remnants of this planet, and the rich are leaving to go to Elon Musk's his station on the moon or on Mars or something, right? That was kind of the portrait I was painting with that. And I found that was why I was able to come back and do the movie, was because people were so willing to help produce the music videos, and we got so much accomplished for so little money. And the production value was really amazing. So it was very encouraging to get to do the test run with the music videos and then to return and try to do the feature film.
Mm-hmm. So you did a lot of work in all over the Philippines, but did you do some R&R? Did you visit any beach resort and relax?
I did. I'm trying to remember where. I think it was just off of Davao, but it was around the time that some Canadians had been kidnapped. So it was a little bit like sketchy. And they were like, you probably don't want to go to these places because you're more likely to get kidnapped there than if you stay in the city. Not saying that you're at risk of getting kidnapped if you go to the Philippines, but at the time of the Abu Sayyaf, when they were more dangerous a few years ago, it was definitely something to be concerned about. So I think I took one weekend of R&R, but for the most part, I was working hard.
Oh, good. And you have traveled all over the world: Uganda, Nepal, Thailand, Greenland, and Liberia. What makes you keep coming back to the Philippines?
Great question. I love skipping winter in Canada. So Philippines is a great spot to skip winter to. I love Philippines is very easy country to travel to because people are friendly and speak good English. And yes, there is poverty, but there's also luxury as well. There's nice malls, there's nice resorts. And I think that often people in the West like to avoid poverty. We don't want to see poverty. But in reality, it's important to engage with people who are living a harder life than you, in more poverty than you, because it helps you see how much you have, and it helps you see that you can help, that you can do something to help. And so I like to mix trips where I get to see friends, I get to play basketball, I get to have some R&R, but I can also help with some charities to do some video work. I do a lot of volunteer videos for different charities to help them fundraise, and a lot of photography. So I'm able to do a little bit of work as well. And I've just become such good friends with people in the Philippines that I haven't been in a couple of, since before COVID, but I'm due to go back.
Great. Can you say something in Tagalog?
Sige, my three favorite words: sige, sige, wala, wala, and then if you're playing basketball, pasa, pasa, or tira, tira, shoot, shoot.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you very
that's my
much. I
two.
had a great time and hope to see you in person one of these days.
Thank you, Janet. So good. Thank you for the interview. I really appreciate what you're doing, and any support of the film. It's so cool. And just you're living the dream. So that's great.
Great. Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.